VocalEye Almost Live Zoom, Winners and Losers, hosted by Amy Amantea, with special guests James Long and Marcus Youssef.
Welcome to this VocalEye Almost Live event. My name is Amy Amantea. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Associate Director here at VocalEye. I'm your host for these Almost Live events, and I am a member of the blind community. I just want to, as always, say big thank you to folks who have made donations and who have supported us by writing lovely, lovely, lovely testimonial letters. Keep those coming, friends. There's always a link that's posted in the chat if you have the capacity to make a financial contribution. But if not, please keep those lovely testimonial letters coming. We really like to know how our programming is impacting our community. If you happen to be joining us on our YouTube channel, we hope that you hover over to that like and subscribe buttons and click on those. So please join us on YouTube. I want to acknowledge that VocalEye is broadcasting to you all from the traditional and stolen lands of the Squamish, the Musqueam, and the Tsleil-Waututh peoples. Ingrid had started by sharing with us some information about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So I kind of want to pick up where that had left off. So today I want to pick up on number 44, call to action number 44. So the previous calls to action were about residential schools and access to education and those kinds of things. And now we're on call to action number 44, which asks of the federal government to develop a national action plan to achieve the goals of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. So the plan has been sort of developed, and what it looks like so far is a framework. It's a framework that recognizes land settlements. And this gets a little bit complicated, but this framework it's a bit antiquated already, even though it's relatively new. So this framework is unjust because it requires First Nation folks to buy back these portions of land, their ancestral land, from private landowners. So they're asked to buy back their own lands. The criteria for recognition of a First Nation status is also very broad. And so what's been happening is that groups that have no history as First Nations have been able to apply for a tribal status to access funding that's available to Indigenous peoples. Furthermore, the process of returning the ancestral land to Indigenous peoples requires that First Nations peoples first have to list these lands as municipalities, which completely undermines their traditional laws and practices. So it's a very complicated thing where we are in call to action number 44. And as we have pointed out in some of the process of truth and reconciliation, what was designed to prevent further atrocities for Indigenous folks here in Canada are not quite hitting the bar that they were expected to hit. So I offer that as a continuation of what Ingrid was talking about in terms of the calls to action. As a reminder, there are 94 calls to action. So we're on action number 44. Welcome to tonight's Wednesday, October the 19th, Almost Live event. Tonight, we are proud to offer you our live event number 98. We're so close to that 100th episode. We're on 98. And tonight we're presenting Winners and Losers with our special guests in the space. So please help me welcome in James Long and Marcus Youssef. Welcome to James. Welcome to Marcus. I know I got Marcus. There's James. Hello, friends. How are we this evening?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. I'm excited to have you both in the space. I want to just jump right on in and talk about winners and losers, because this is not it's new to us in the space, but it's not a new thing. So tell me about like the relationship between the two of you and where this idea came from. One of you can start.
I'll start. This is James speaking, the winner. It started.
It starts so quickly.
I know the origin. Let's do the real origin story, Marcus. When we were driving up to the caravan farm to help make a big show with a bunch of pals up there at the caravan farm up in the North Okanagan. And a friend of ours had sent along this an email, a chain email about a pyramid scheme. He didn't know it was a pyramid scheme, or he didn't see it as a pyramid scheme. He saw it as a real path to self-realization and becoming a better human being. And Marcus and I stopped on the side of the road on the break from the drive and started talking about this. And we're kind of confounded as to why our friend was trying to find a better lot in life in this very awkward fashion, because we deemed him to be a winner in our estimation anyway. He's a great person. He had a great family, seemed to have a great career. And that's where the conversation, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Marcus, that's where it started and then led to a series of events and attempts at other kind of shows. I'll let Marcus take it from here. If you want to add to it, Marcus, go for it.
But I think that the salient point to remember is that when we stopped on that highway overlooking a river, we also smoked a joint, which is not a good idea. A loser move for sure. But that did happen as well. Yeah, and I think we tried a bunch of different things. We decided to try. I think at the same time, it got us talking about how we felt about our own lives and how we felt in relationship to each other. And I think one of the things that came up for me and that I remember us talking about was like, oh, it's so interesting. Like, we're both in our 40s. We both have kids. Jamie's quite a bit younger than mine. If you ask pretty much anybody in our community, the theater community, who's the winner, Marcus or Jamie, everybody would go, they're both, you're the same. And yet in our relationship, I think we identified that despite our similarity and despite how closely our lives kind of dovetailed with each other, that we felt most competitive with each other. We were actually really competitive with each other, and we're always trying to prove that we were the winner, even though no one else in the world could care less. And that got us thinking about, men and being middle-aged and what our friend went through and this strange thing that he did. And so we started, the idea we hit on was to realize this was to write a play about two Russian novelists competing to write the best novel, which is just the worst idea for a play you could possibly imagine. But we started writing that, but in the mornings when we got together, we would do a warm-up game, which we called Winners and Losers, where we would name a person, place, or thing and debate whether it was a winner or a loser with each other. And we know enough of what we do and have been doing it for long enough to know to record those. And so we recorded all those and we did them every day for 3 weeks, and we had them transcribed. And at the end of the 3-week workshop, we read the bits of the play that we had tried to write, and then read the transcripts of the recordings and went, oh my God, this is really dramatic.
There's the play, yeah.
Yeah, or at the beginning of a play, and we were, I think, fascinated by how we were just having a good time playing a game, but how much of the game was also us doing the same thing simultaneously, trying to win in relationship to each other without even realizing it. And that got us sort of thinking about, again, competition and all that kind of stuff. Capitalism and then our different backgrounds. Jamie comes from a working class family. He's white. I'm mixed race, identify as brown, but my father was a banker, and the various complications in our identities that aren't always what you'd expect necessarily either.
So talking about like intersectionalities and privilege and all of those kinds of things that are right now really hot topics. Were they hot topics when you were writing this and exploring this idea? Would you say?
Well, I'll jump in quickly. I know I just talked. Oh no, you want to talk?
I think James can't unmute himself.
There, I'm unmuted now. I'm unmuted now.
Go ahead.
Were they hot topics when we were doing this? And that's a really great question, because I would say for me, it was a tepid or warm topic, because my theater and history making had been making, I started a company with a Japanese Canadian woman. So the question of race and equity and the diversity, they were always part of our work at Theater Replacement. But I wouldn't say it was central to my practice as a white, cis, straight, 6 foot tall, relatively handsome kind of guy. Well, thank you, Marcus.
Not modest.
Marcus
modest?
is nodding right now. I just explained to the community, he's nodding with like mouth agape at how beautiful I really am.
Beautiful.
No,
I love this.
So I wouldn't say it was central to my practice, and it obviously, and you'll hear it in the show. The question, as you said, Amy, these questions have become more central to everyone's practice right now.
Mhm.
But it at that point in time in 2009, maybe we first entered this room, or 2010. It wasn't as pronounced for me personally, and I'll stop there.
How about you, Marcus?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I think that, I mean, I'm a more overtly political artist, and so these questions have been much more central to my practice. I'm, you know, cisgendered, 5'11" and a half, but brown, and certainly felt othered in some way always, as I grew up in very white environments. But at the same time, at that time, we were in a different moment. The conversations were different in that what felt most dangerous, and in some ways does still, although in a different way, was to talk about class and talk about financial privilege. That at that time, it felt like talking about race between us and debating that. We actually kind of left that alone for a long time. And it was because we toured the show for 5-6 years. And during the Obama presidency, it's weird how these things influence audiences and how they read things. But during the Obama presidency, it kind of felt like we were a bit post-race now. It's cool, like it's great. There's a Black US president. When Trump was elected, it very quickly changed. And in fact, we stopped doing the show quite quickly after Trump was elected, in part because we were doing it in the States a fair bit. And Jamie was like, I don't want to be that guy. And so it's fascinating how this kind of material and us using our real personas, because we just play ourselves in the show, and real versions of ourselves, how it's influenced by what's going on in the news and in the zeitgeist.
I realize I'm just going to backtrack a little bit because you both identified yourself as cis men, and there may be folks in this room that don't know what the term cis means. So does one of you want to unpack that for our guests in the space?
Oh, it's a good test.
I can do it. I can do it. I can do it because I have a very sharp daughter in these areas.
Yeah.
But I want to try, Amy.
I'll let you do it. Go ahead.
We
Jamie.
identify with the gender that we were assigned at birth. Yes?
Yes, you got it.
Good. Okay. Thank you.
You got it. Yeah. Yeah. There you go. That's the cisgender. So I'm a cis woman. If you identify with the gender you were assigned at birth, you are a cis human. You're a cis human.
Good. That felt like a win to me already. I'm winning. I'm winning.
There
Not
you
against
go.
you, Marcus, just generally with my 13-year-old daughter who would have got me if I didn't do that correctly.
You know
Well,
what? I'm
I mean,
totally fine with it.
It's nice
That's
that you had
great.
somebody
I think
keeping you
that's awesome.
accountable.
Thank you. Yep. I thank her every night for it. Kind of.
kind of. What can we expect in Winners and Losers? Because we're gonna listen to this. This is a CBC podcast version of it that you all I guess recorded during the pandemic. What can we expect from what we're about to listen to?
Yeah, what's different, maybe I'll point out some of the differences to what it was when we toured it around, because obviously we toured it around. It's a very, very simple show. Its look is very simple. It starts with us drawing a big square, like a ring, like the one behind Amy right now.
My boxing ring.
Your boxing ring on the stage with some chalk. There's a table and 2 chairs in the middle. And that is the set. Nothing else changes. We move the table away at one point in the middle, but we really sit at either end of the table, and we just engage in this conversation about all the things that we are or we're not, or how we differ. Yeah, that I think was one of the great successes for me in the form and content sort of argument. Is the content is us, it's our stories, and it's very much like a kitchen. Sitting in a kitchen, if you will, or sitting in a living room and just hanging out with your buddy, or at a bar and just having a good old chin wag, except we're doing it in front of an audience. And as you'll hear in the show, we acknowledge that the audience is there. And then in what's happened here with the folks in Toronto who put it together for us, they've added some music underneath it and kind of spiced it up just for the audio experience, because it was played on CBC, and I think is being played again, or it just got played again in the CBC After Hours radio program thing. I can't remember what it's called. But
I hope the royalties are being raked in.
Oh yeah,
CBC.
No,
Oof.
I'm sorry.
How many pennies did you get? Wait, we don't have pennies.
I have to say this. Nobody will care, and I apologize, but I have to say this. It's really interesting because it's like they have this podcast division now, and it got broadcast several times now on national radio we used to would have been paid $6,000 an hour for that material. Now we get, because it was a podcast first and they're just rebroadcasting it. Now we get $150.
Oh,
It's bizarre.
loser.
I used to do a lot of radio work for CBC back in the day when they actually, and now they just, they've subcontracted it, and it's basically for free that they get to broadcast it. It's bizarre.
That is
We're
bizarre.
the losers in that one.
Losers.
Losers on that one, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm starting to catch the vibe of what it is we're going to experience. Should we throw out a content warning before we get started?
Sure. Let's list them. What do we got? Go, Marcus.
Oh, there's racism, there's sexism, there's references to violence, there's profanity, there's, I would say, I don't know how to, or I don't know how to say it exactly. There are not derogatory, but potentially offensive descriptions of disability.
Mm-hmm.
There's pretty much any content warning. I think you could, they did bleep out the swearing, I think, so there's no swearing. But aside from that, it's there's quite a few. And I mean, one of the interesting things about making this podcast, like we stopped doing the show, then a lot of the things that have happened over the last 5 years happened. And when they asked us, CBC asked us to do this, you know, one of the things we said is we're not sure how comfortable we feel with this going out in the world. That said, now that we've done it, and I'm excited to have you guys hear it, because it's also listening to it again, I went, oh no, like this is two friends talking the way friends talk. And almost as if they're in private, because that's how we made it, but it's not in private. There's people witnessing. But so I don't think it's actually, I believe very much in the show and what it's doing, but definitely there's trigger warnings.
Well, and I would say too, and we'll talk about this when we do our little Q&A afterwards, after we listen to it. But I would say that, you know, good art sort of asks us to be uncomfortable in moments, right? And then to talk through them afterwards. So we say that a lot in these spaces. If you're uncomfortable, yeah, it's okay to be uncomfortable. You're recognizing something within yourself. So with that, my friends, I'm so excited to invite our guests in the community to just sit back and have a listen. So you know that this is all audio based, but there is going to be a photo up on your screen. And it is the photo of James and Marcus sitting at the table across from each other as they described that the play looks like. But we'll just be hearing some audio, and James and Marcus will join us for our Q&A afterwards. Sound like a plan?
We look a lot younger. Yeah.
Well, it's
Thanks,
a good
Amy.
thing nobody in this space can really see your faces.
That's true.
You'll have to trust us.
There you are, my friends. All right, Rick, when you're ready, go ahead and hit play on Winners and Losers.
Due to copyright restrictions, this feature presentation has not been recorded. Please check below for more information, including links to the material if it is hosted elsewhere.
All right, friends, that was Winners and Losers. We'll bring James and Marcus back into the space. Hello, friends, back into the space.
Hi.
Hi, there's
Hello.
Marcus for you. I think when
Should be here too.
you pop
hold on.
the camera on,
There you are.
you can
I
spotlight
should
you.
pop up. There we go.
There you go. There you go. What a roller coaster ride that was. My first question is, are y'all still friends today? Because that kind of is a rough ending, but are y'all still friends?
I think so. You know, we
Think so?
keep working together,
Really?
so something must be happening. No, absolutely we
Wow,
are.
the
I think
equivocation there is kind of worrying, David.
No, you hesitated too. No, because we're being polite to see who wanted to talk first. And I would say, actually, in all honesty, Amy, is that this process has probably allowed us to be very, very, very close friends. Much closer than we would have ever been without the process, because we got to over 220 times enact a real conversation about friendship and maleness and competition, all those lovely things.
How did you build this play from microwaves to like saying some of the meanest, most transparent things that you possibly could about each other? Because I think there are some things that we can battle about that are very surface, right? And other things that we you know, like I can't imagine sometimes sitting in a space with people in my family, people that I'm friends with, and dumping on them everything I think about them.
Yeah, I mean, in that, in a way, is a bit of the art or the writing of it. Like we, as I said at the beginning, we played this game, name a person, place, or thing, and debate whether it's a winner or loser. And then we also played a different version of the game, which was like pick a thing, like cooking or I don't know, partner, and debate who's better at it. And so we did both those games. Then we had all these transcripts, and some of them were, as you say, like utterly facile and silly, like Pamela Anderson or whatever. But then over time, we also had like your father and my father and you. You know, eventually we got to you, and so the piece is very consciously constructed to begin with two dudes just sitting and having fun, and then over the course of it, it becoming more personal and more dangerous. And part of, I think, the art of the writing of it was like to make that feel kind of seamless and inevitable, like that but it was very conscious.
When you took a look at these transcripts from these games that you were playing, did you keep very true to the words that were used, or did you take the concept and then dramatize it?
I think if we had a bit of a rule inside of it, and I think there's another bit of a context thing, just makes it more fun to think about us doing it. When we did play this game and record ourselves, we also did it with quasi-Russian accents, because we were in the Russian hall, which gave us some freedom to say things we wouldn't probably not have normally said, because if you think about putting on the Russian accent was kind of like the equivalent, and this is no slight on the Russian community, to putting on a clown nose, not because Russians are clowns, but because we put on a funny voice and we could say whatever we wanted, and we were still speaking our truth. And so when we then finally looked at the transcripts, I think if anything, the real rule was we just edited down. We just distilled the content. So we got rid of a lot of stuff, because we would have had probably 30 hours of material. So we would find a section that was actually humming and actually address something that felt essential or important or really funny. And then we would just carve out the fluff and the excess until we had a little bit more of a pointed argument.
We also had, yeah, I think that's right. Like all those words were tightened versions of what we actually spoke. But we also had a rule, which was the improvisational nature of the show, which was we could change how we said things. Like we didn't have to say them exactly the same way, which is very different than a straight up normal theater piece where it's extremely important that we all say it exactly the same way, so that I know that I will react this way when you know, and this was the opposite. It was like, if we're playing the game for real and try to win in the audience's eyes, we can change how we say things. And that kept it really hot, because we had to stick to what was there, but how we did it could change, and that could actually have this enormous impact on each other. It could switch something that felt like I won that last night to, oh no, I'm losing now. I got to change, you know. And then we also built in the show, and it's not in the podcast version, but we had several improvs sections where we would just improvise at the top of the show, and a couple of times in the middle of the show. We actually invited the audience to give us a topic, and we would just live improvise that to give the audience like a window into the fact that like this is real, like to make them feel like this, we're doing this for real.
It's a peek behind the curtain at the process.
Yeah.
A little bit. Oh, isn't that interesting? How many times did you say you performed this throughout the States and elsewhere?
Well over 200.
Yeah.
I always say like between 2 and 220, somewhere in that range, I think is where it landed. The first time being, I think, Richmond Gateway was the first
we had
iteration.
A soft opening in Richmond, and then and went to a dozen countries. And
oh, and worth mentioning, of course, Chris Abraham. There was a director to the piece too. So Marcus and I did the first, year and a half of work on this on our own, determined, and this is kind of interesting, I think, because of the gender piece inside of the whole conversation, and the actual act of making this show, is that we, at one point, we needed a referee and we needed a director. because we were so deep inside the forest and the weeds. It was
Mhm.
kind of hard to tell what was working, what wasn't. And if I was in charge, I would have probably positioned myself as a winner in some, or maybe positioned myself as a loser, maybe dramaturgically, whatever reason for the play idea of it. And so we just discussed a bunch of different directors, men and women from across the country that we really wanted to bring in. And we actually landed on Chris Abraham, who's a remarkably good director who he runs a company called Crows, works at Stratford and Shaw and all the big fancy places. He's a bit of the mayor of Toronto Theatre Town in a lot of ways. And I remember us giving a pause and saying, geez, another guy? Do we need another man inside this room so it gets even more testosteronic, if that's a word? And we determined, yeah, it was a real conversation we had. Do we want to open it up a little bit? We said, no, it's a really male conversation that we were having anyways. And other people have done this show with a female frame on it. And so Chris brought his eye to it, and he was able to help shape the argument as well. And he was the one who came up with this idea of the bombs. Say something new every night. Try to hurt the other guy just to see what happens. And
Mhm.
he ended up being very integral to the process.
You just mentioned that this has been done with like a female cast. Is it the same dialogue, or are they starting the process from the beginning and doing exactly what you all did, playing winners and losers 1,000 times and having the transcripts created?
It's a combination of the two. There's actually students in University of North Carolina right now doing a new version, but yeah, some Calgary-based artists, female artists, did a female version, and in the published version, we kind of outlined different ways people could approach it. It's a bit of a combo. Like they do use a bunch of the stuff that's in there, but they adapt it for themselves based on their own kind of debates and also identities. Like an interesting thing about the Calgary-based one that was produced in Toronto and Calgary is an older woman, I think an older white woman, and a younger or a woman of color who are a young Black woman who are in debate. So there's age in a way as one of the elements that it is not at all with Jamie and I, or barely. I'm a few years older than Jamie, but barely is. So that gets really interesting. Like you start to go, and we've done lots of workshops
there.
too.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and also just like how you start to kind of go, oh, there are so many different levels on which we calculate these kinds of privileges or whatever you want to call it. And age had never occurred to us, of course, because we're the same age. But it's pretty interesting. We'd done workshops many times at the theaters we performed in, and just turned it into a game that you play with audience members as a workshop, and it's fascinating to see how everybody kind of brings their own kind of perspective or experience to it.
And are they also doing the improv bit that you all did? Are you taking that?
Yeah, that's what they do. Like we pair audience members up and they play the game. Like that's what they do.
Do you recall back to those days asking the audience about throwing an idea out that you can, what kind of ideas they threw out at you?
Just the one that did not work. Remember cheese? Cheese just didn't work. I remember someone said cheese, and there's lots of things to talk about cheese in retrospect, but I remember being stumped by cheese. It was a fail. That was a real fail one, but I'm sure there's some positives too.
What I remember most clearly is we did the show at a really great theater in Washington, D.C., downtown Washington, D.C. for weeks called Woolly Mammoth. And it was during the Republican primary in 2015. And every night, the very liberal, very deep state, Democrat audience would go, Donald Trump, because it was hilarious that Donald Trump was running to be the candidate for the Republican Party, and everybody was like, he's so stupid, there's no way,
there's no chance.
And I remember us going, don't be so sure. And but then we actually had to say when that would happen, because it happened every night, we would go, no, we're not doing Trump anymore, sorry, we won't do it.
The one topic that's off limits.
We'd stopped talking about Trump long before.
How do you all feel about it when you listen to it back? Are there things that you'd want to go back and change? Are there things you're like, oh, we should add this? Does it feel incomplete to you in any way?
No.
It's an artifact now. It almost exists as this little thing you can put aside. And it's one of these things that I look forward to in 10 years or so. There's a few plays in our respective catalogs. Ali and Ali is one of them that I would like to hear Marcus and his comrades from 2003. When was Ali and Ali one?
Four originally. Yeah,
Four.
I went for a while, but yeah.
And I would love to see those three guys who put that up on stage do it again and just hear it again and go, wow, this is right after 9/11. It's really that brown guy Arab the Middle Eastern sort of diaspora. Where were you guys from in that piece?
Oh, it's very 2004. But we were from Agrabah, which is the mythical land of Disney's Aladdin.
Yeah, and to hear them do that today, I think would be just so fascinating. It's the same with this piece because in Ali and Ali, nothing should change about that play. Like you shouldn't
No.
go back and try to repair it, or because it was already pretty great. This I feel the same way. You know, we're actually at a 10-year anniversary right now, probably from 2012 when we did it the first time.
We are. It's
To
10
be
years.
able to read it publicly and just see how people respond, as you guys got to experience right now, to hear something that was written in a different time.
Mm-hmm.
I also I listened to the last half hour. I tuned in the last half hour, and honestly, Jamie and I were texting, and I was like pretty emotional about it. Like in that we also on a personal level really went through something together. Like it was really hard. Like there were times when we were in Toronto and we were playing for 5 weeks in a big theater in Toronto, and every night I'd get so upset, and I'd go for a walk every day before the show, and like go, oh, I'm gonna get him, like and you know, we really went through and came through something together, and it's also for me an artifact of that.
We've got a hand from our one of our guests in the space, and the time is now all yours in the community to ask questions, share comments, what resonates, what you're curious about, maybe even what you didn't like. That's all fair game. So Marianne's got a hand. Marianne, why don't you go ahead and ask your question or share your comment?
Sure. For one thing, both of you, thanks for sharing the real and the vulnerable, and sometimes the really vulnerable with us. And you had started to kind of actually go where my mind is going as a theater professional as well. How much of yourself did you leave on the stage every night, especially when you got so deep into the real and so, you know, I could see, like, you know, the hands going up and that's it, I'm done, I can't talk to you anymore. There's just nothing either one of us can say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you know, how do you keep that space for yourself as an actor, knowing you're going to do this to your friend every night as a show, but this is also the real conversation.
Yeah, it's a great question, Marianne. I'll just quickly say, Jamie probably have something to say, but I'll just say that one of the things we developed quite early on, because there were many times when exactly what you're describing, at least speak for myself, occurred. But we agreed, we had 2 rituals. We had one ritual before the show, where we would each have about half a shot of scotch together and toast doing the show. And then we had a ritual that we don't ever really talk about, like we don't describe it to people, but we had a ritual that we did after every show. And we would come together and do that ritual after every single show. And there was something about just the ritualistic nature and repetitive nature of that was very helpful, even when I, in Toronto in particular, was kind of going crazy and getting really spinny, as Jamie describes it, about doing it and not wanting to do it, in fact, because I found it painful. And that really helped.
I'm glad you two found ways to take care of yourselves together in that community space, because as an actor, my soul was aching for both of you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it impacts people differently inside of it. That's something that I've always taken as a bit of a marker of some kind of success, that consistently with every run, particularly when we were doing these runs in communities where we knew people, we would be able to have conversations with folks afterwards. And some of our very close theater professional friends would go, you know, I just don't like it. I don't like this show, guys. I don't think it's a good idea. I'm not sure how much you guys should pursue this any further. They might say, I respect the show, but maybe this isn't the best way to go forward with your careers. And then other people would come out saying, right on, that was great, blah, blah, blah. Like it became a sports match for some. And it does have a bit of a breadth of impact.
Okay, we're gonna go to Louise, and then we're gonna go to Lori. So Louise, you're up, my friend. Give Louise a moment to unmute. Think we've got, oh no, we don't have Louise just yet. Oh,
Okay, got it.
got it.
Okay. First of all, my heart was in my throat a few times because I saw something. I knew this was acting, but I saw the reality of friendship in the fact that they were two, and I know it's only a play, but I saw the opposite. And I saw pain, I saw hurt in both lives. You know, underneath that surface, when you got into fathers and that later part, I saw the world and how the world would see different society of, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Poor to rich, to you are privileged, you're not. You've worked harder, you know, feelings of family. I saw the way you built it to make it real. It was very real, very strong. Brought me to a relationship. It even hit where a relationship in my own life, not with my own parents or anything like that, but with someone in my life that, yes, I try and meet them in everything I do because they just want to pull me down everywhere I go. So I actually saw what you guys were doing in a different way. I saw the way to share to the world. What's the word I'm looking for? You were showing the world in different, and I don't know if it's, you know, you've done different versions and different things, but what you showed us tonight is the reality. You showed the world tonight, or us tonight, the reality that there's no one who has a perfect life.
Is that the saying, the grass is always greener?
Yes. Yes. I think it was the fact that that's, you know, you said the nail on the head there, Amy, because it went back and forth and who was a winner, who was a loser, but it's the feelings underneath it when you get into parts of it. And that's important. You guys left the heart waiting for the next line. Who was gonna get the next dive? Who was gonna win the next battle? Who was going to come out on the top? Who was going to be hurt at the end of that statement? It's reality. You were doing reality there because this happens in the world. And thank you for making me see some of the things I do my own self.
Thank you, Louise, for sharing. It's very insightful.
Louise. Yeah, thanks, Louise.
Lori has a hand, and then Natasha has a hand. Go ahead, Lori. Give Lori just a moment to unmute. While we're waiting for Lori, have you all like let your own kids listen to this now that they're not such young children anymore?
My kids saw it because they're older than James.
Saw it, yeah.
Yeah, I think Oscar was, we were at Push in 20, Oscar would have been about 14 or 15 and Zach was like 19, 18 or 19. Yeah, Oscar didn't like it. He was like,
audio now unmuted.
There we go. Okay, sorry about that.
You're answering the question next, Jamie, just so you know.
Sure.
Go ahead, Lori.
Okay, first, did you guys ever feel like you wanted to throw either one of yourselves off the stage on when you guys would, you know, kind of just keep badgering at each other?
There was, I know when I overstepped a boundary, and I know when Marcus overstepped a boundary. I can only really think of two in terms of the bomb. And there was one time, this was early in the run, Marcus, when you said that you were talking to somebody else about something we do in the show, and they agreed with you that blah 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 blah, something about inside the conversation, and I was like, really, F you, man. This is a thing that happens on the stage. If you're going to go wandering around and poll people outside of this piece about their impression about, and that's when I wanted to smack them. And I did want to smack them pretty good, but I didn't. I'm not a smacker. I haven't been a smacker in a very long time, but I wanted to smack them then.
Well, let's see, but it was very good, and you guys, are still coming out being friends even with all the issues that you guys went through to do this play, which is I think it's the most important thing.
Good.
Yeah, it's the
Yeah,
process
Lori,
of the discovery, right? That
Yes.
process.
Yeah, I think that Jamie alluded to this earlier, Laurie, but I think that because we went through it and because we committed to going through it, like come hell or high water, and didn't walk away when I did that, or when Jamie did other things that I found deeply upsetting and offensive, that coming through the other side, as Jamie mentioned, it's weird. Like I feel a kind of closeness to Jamie that I do not feel necessarily in the same way. I've been, we both have lots of really close friends, but there's a certain kind of, because we've been so honest with each other, there's a certain kind of trust there that is really, really important to me, actually.
Would you guys do this again? Would you ever do something like this again?
I don't know.
End version.
Where you are today versus where you were then.
Yeah.
Be interesting.
It might be interesting. I don't know. I really do like the fact that we've created something that now sits comfortably from another moment. We do lots of stuff together. We're trying to, we've been commissioned and working with a filmmaker in town to write a film version of it right now. And it's going to be quite different than what you just experienced. It's a narrative piece about two guys trying to accomplish something together. And that feels like a natural progression. Like to go back and say, let's improv a bunch of new topics. For me, anyways, who's more interested in kind of like bashing things around in kind of how the form is, I would say, sure, let's do bits and bobs from this thing and then find a different way to attack or respond or reflect on what happened in 2012 as opposed to what's happening now. Yeah, I don't know. It's a curious question.
I wanted to like make a lot of money and franchise it into a board game or something, but
yeah, that sounds good.
Put it together.
So we don't play Trivial Pursuit on a Sunday night. We play Winners and Losers.
Yeah.
That's
Winners and Losers with
oh, can you just see some of the family crap that would come up?
I know.
With some of those questions.
Exactly. At Thanksgiving, it'd be awesome, right?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I think my family needs this game in a big way. But we may not all come back together again after it. Okay, Natasha's got a hand, and then Megan's got a hand. And then James is going to answer that question about his kids listening to this podcast. Go ahead, Natasha.
Okay. I have 2 questions, if that's okay. First of all, I'm super curious about what did the first time taking digs at each other look like, and how did that kind of evolve over time?
First time, yeah. It'd be curious to look at the transcripts and see what the dates are on them. Like, what were the first ones we did? Like, I know what would have happened. Like the first time I would have, trying to think of some of the things we say in the show that would have been a bit shocking. Anyway,
I think, Jamie, of when we wrote the why you're a loser things. That's what occurs to me from the first time we spoke those.
Did we do that in the first process or the second one?
I don't remember. That lands for me is the like. Sorry.
Yeah, that would have been the moment that we were really, and that was very emotional. Oh, that was really late in the game because we wrote those before the first time we ever did it publicly, which was in a workshop sort of showcase scenario during the Push Festival in this little side thing called Push Off, where we had a little project we were working on. This is in 2011, probably. And there's a bunch of international folks there, including a lot of our friends in the theater community. We said, we've been working on this project and we want to share it with you tonight. We got about 45 minutes of stuff. And the day or two before, we said, well, what's missing in this piece right now is, Marcus, am I a winner or a loser? And vice versa. And so we committed to writing them. It was not improvised. And we read them live to each other for the first time ever in front of an audience. And it was really emotional. Like I don't crack. Marcus he's the better crier for sure. And I'm not a crier, I'm not a cracker. And I cracked inside of it when I was speaking why Marcus was a loser. Because when I say he's a loser, it's always in relationship to me. That's how the game works. And it was really, really quite troubling. So that was a moment.
Yeah, that's a cool thought. I can't even imagine what that process must have looked like and changed over time. Would you say that it got a little sharper over time, or softened a bit?
I think we got, Natasha, I think we got what I liked, partly because it was safe, felt safer, but also partly for the art of it too, because we did it for 5 years. Over time, we got better, I think, at treating it like a play and not something that was actually happening. And we got really good at it and good at performing it. So that, for example, like that podcast, which we recorded a year or two ago, which I feel like listening to it now is pretty successful. I had a successful version of the play. You know, neither of us was devastated. You know, we did that at Jamie's house during the pandemic, and afterwards we didn't even like notice, you know what I mean? Like then we had lunch and like did just our normal things. Whereas early in the process, it was much more fraught and dangerous. So in a way, I felt like we learned how to act it in a way that still felt really real, but that didn't cost us as much most of the time. There were always moments, but most of the time. I don't know if you agree with that, Jim.
Yeah, I think it had an ebb and I think if I was to kind of track it, we were probably, I bet you between show 50 and show 80, it probably kind of dulled out a little bit, you know, when we were kind of in that middle space of no longer experiencing it, but not really good at acting it yet. And then we found the acting chops of it and it lifted up. It ebbed and flowed. And that's how I would always gauge it. Did I feel injured after? Was often a good sign for me. It meant that Marcus probably had a really good show. Did I feel like a victor after? Was probably a good sign for me. And if Marcus looked a little bit sad, I don't know if I would mark that as a success, but I would mark it that maybe something was really happening that night in the show. That if the audience is king inside these things, they had a good experience of it.
With you guys saying words like safe and dangerous, I think to say safe space would be, I think we could throw that term out the window. But would you say that it was cathartic in a sense, or there was a sense of self-exploration and the being called out and being called in?
Yes, I would. I would say actually I learned more about myself in this process than I have in any other. Or maybe not. We've done a number of collaborations with a really great neurodiverse artists with Down syndrome named Al McNeil and made big shows. And I think that process has also helped me learn way more about myself too in an equal way. But I would say those are the two in a way that have really kind of, so yeah, but I think you're right, not safe space. It wasn't always safe, it just wasn't. And but the safe part was that we had agreed to be there in the unsafe
committed
space.
to that. Yeah,
you know what I mean? But yeah, for me, it was rewarding.
Thanks, Natasha.
Thank you, guys.
Megan has a hand. Let's give Megan a moment to unmute. So Jamie, have you let your kids listen to the podcast?
Yes.
Megan got in there. Go ahead,
Yes.
Megan.
So was this play based on a true story?
Yeah, the whole thing is a true story. It's all true.
Wow. I didn't know that. Wow.
No, it's all, and I think, Megan, the curious part about it was Marcus and I made up all these words on the fly, talking truth to ourselves and trying to and playing a game. Was very sporting. The the only untruth of it, and this was the surprise part about it, was we did it in a room all by ourselves. Then suddenly in 2012, we found ourselves doing it in front of a bunch of people. Then that's where things got really complicated, because how do you perform? We're always performing in some way. Every moment we breathe, every time we're in public, even when we're alone in our thoughts, probably we're performing some version of ourselves to ourselves. And suddenly Marcus and I found ourselves performing ourselves in front of a bunch of strangers and saying things we would have never said in public.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And let the chips fall where they may.
We just did. It was weird. It was scary because it was like, hang on. I remember when we realized that too, we went, oh, we made this up. This is all based on our relationship and knowledge of each other.
Yeah.
And our trust of each other. Like, oh my God, now there's like 200 strangers here. Well,
who may not actually understand the relationship between the two of you.
Yeah. And
right.
also,
and how you can get to this place.
Yeah. Like, why do they feel comfortable saying that?
Wow. Thanks, Megan, for your comments. Yeah, it's like the kind of things that you say to each other when you've had too much to drink.
Yeah, exactly.
You know. So, what has been the result of family listening to something so personal about the two of you?
Yeah, well, that's just to answer your question. The answer is no, Amy. Because my son
You're younger
would be bored. He was only 2 when he was born. He was only a few months old when we first did it. And my daughter's 3.5 years older than him, so she would have about 3.5 or 4. And and Nora will. I'll let Nora listen to it at some point. She'll get a bit bored too, or I'll let her watch the video. She might find that a little bit more interesting, because at least I'll be making funny faces at her or something. I don't know. But there's some content still inside of it that I think I'm going to hold on to as private for another couple of years, and then share it later on.
Except that it's out on the World Wide Web, right? So.
Yeah, but she oddly doesn't look for information about her father on the World Wide Web. It seems she's looking more at TikTok. That's much more interesting.
As 13-year-olds will.
That's right.
Sorry, Marcus, you were going to add something.
Oh, I was just going to, because I said my youngest didn't like it, but my eldest, who was 18 or 19, really liked it. And he really responded in a slightly different way, I think, than my 15-year-old, to its kind of transparency, as you said, and honesty. And he felt like some of the class things that we talk, Jamie and I, wrestle with, he said, oh, those are alive in my relationships with my friends, and we never talk about it. And he really appreciated the honesty about that.
That's an interesting thing when the children tell the parents how much they appreciate this kind of content.
Yeah.
Because it's alive and well in their lives, right?
Yeah.
I'm all for the video game or the board game.
Right on. It's a great idea, right, Marianne?
It actually is, because there are so many people who don't. I mean, maybe you don't want to get all the way to the why are you a loser or whatever, because then you might not have any friends or family anymore.
None to play the game with.
Yeah, but there definitely are some real topics that would bring up some incredible conversation and some real truths in a lot of places. I could see you developing this into a total diversity conversation / workshop. All kinds of things could be done with this.
I'm just imagining, Marianne, when somebody pulls up the like, tell sis why she's a loser card, and everybody's like, whoa. No. But it's interesting. I made a project after this with our mutual friend, whose name is Sarah Stanley, who's a director and a theater creator, called Awkward and Embarrassing Conversations. It's very much born out of this work, but it's not a competition.
Right.
But it uses a lot of, like, it was kind of adapting a lot of the game that we played, Jamie and I, but a much more, so it's scary and edgy, but the overall thing is not about getting the other person. It's about like, how can we have these conversations with each other?
Where do we find this, Marcus?
It's a workshop that goes into schools.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. that we've done it in a bunch of diversity, as Marianne, as you say, we've done it in kind of diversity contexts quite a bit, and we're sort of not able to do it ourselves, but we've now trained people to do it in schools.
Very cool.
That is super cool. I would love to talk to you about that on the
For sure.
on the after, because I do teach improv and use some diversity types of places for some of that. And I mean, I was sitting there listening to you guys talk the classism thing, and I was like, oh my God, that's me and my husband.
Right.
He comes from a family that happens to be wealthy. I come from a family who is one step out of the projects. And what have we done with the life before, the life together, so on and so forth. And where does class creep in? Where does reverse classism creep in? Yeah, there's just such rich conversations that happen as an undertone. And I commend you both for how well you navigated some extremely tricky water.
Thank you.
Well, that's what we like to bring to the space, friends, is difficult conversations, because I think, I've said it before, you've heard me say it a ton of times, is that I think good art generates good conversation. And if we're uncomfortable, let's talk about why we're uncomfortable, right? That I think is part and parcel how we move forward together as human beings. But I could go off on that soapbox all day long. Before we officially say goodbye to our friends in the space, I wonder if you all want to pull some prize draw names with me.
Oh yes.
Want to play that
please.
game?
Yes,
These
please.
there's not a losers part to this. They're all winners. We're playing winners and winners here. So I'm going to bring Donna into the space. We've got 6 prizes tonight, friends. We got 6 prizes, so your chances are pretty good.
Hi, Donna. Hi, Donna.
Hi. Donna knows everybody. Local actors in the community, friends.
Panto bag.
Oh,
She's got her
panto
hands.
bag. Whoa.
All right, who's up first? Who's the winner?
I'll let Marcus.
Oh,
go
I was going to
first.
say Jamie.
Makes me a winner
We're
right there.
such good friends. Okay, Marcus, I am shaking up the names, and whatever word you want to throw out at me, I will stop.
Glasses.
Glasses. It is Megan.
Megan.
Number 1. Okay, Jamie Long.
Sneakers.
Sneakers. Ellen.
Ellen's gonna be like, I won a prize last time. It's okay, Ellen. I'll send them.
I mean, what are the prizes? Are they exciting prizes? Is it
These are gonna be Halloween themed prizes.
Halloween themed prizes?
Yeah.
Oh,
All right.
cool. Thank you. This is Ellen. Thank you.
No problem, Ellen.
Marcus, you're up.
Nose hair.
Nose hair. Marie T.
Marie, wonderful.
That's not the prize. Nose hair is not the prize.
Thank goodness for that.
The Chesterfield.
Chesterfield is Deb.
Wonderful, Deb. Awesome.
Yeah.
1 more each.
Gotta think of a really good word. Tennis player.
Tennis player is Karim.
Karim.
And the last winner, the rest are losers.
Gouda.
See, there are
Yeah.
losers.
Sandra.
Sandra. Awesome. That's a lot of prizes. Normally we do 1 in a space, but it's Halloween and I went shopping. So so everybody gets to be a winner of those 6 folks. So thanks for joining. Marcus, Jamie, thank you so much for joining us
now unmuted.
on Almost Live. It's been a real pleasure having you in the space. One question before you go. I know you started to tease us. What's next for y'all? What y'all working on?
Philo has left the meeting.
Okay. I'm gonna say my the most exciting thing I'm working on right now is the show with this photographer named Amy Amantea.
People are gonna think that I yeah.
Who's Amy Amantea?
I don't know. I think she's somewhere in this call right now.
Maybe.
And it's my favorite show because, can I talk about it a bit, Amy? Because I still like to talk about it a lot.
Oh, now you're gonna embarrass me. It's not why. Okay.
Oh,
I thought you were gonna
Please
talk
embarrass
about your
her.
film.
Oh,
No,
you're
film
not gonna
smells.
There's her. Come on.
All right,
on.
embarrass
Talk
me.
about it. Come
Well,
on, come on.
because Amy, all she does is give, as you guys all well know. So Amy is also a photographer. I don't know how much she talks about that. And we're developing a project right now. We have like a week to work in December, and then we got another week in February, and then we got about 5 weeks in May, and then we're going to show the thing where Amy talks about her photography practice. And because Amy doesn't look at her photographs the way most people typically look at a photograph, she works with people to describe those photographs back to her. And it's a beautiful conversation. It's a live, gorgeous piece that we've experienced so far, where people talk about her photographs and photography and what it is to perceive. And I'm super excited to work on that one.
Will we get to see that here on VocalEye, especially for us people that live in the States? Hint, hint, hint.
We'll figure out
Yeah.
something, Lori. We haven't even really put all the pieces together yet. It's
Okay.
early days, but thank you for being interested.
Uh-huh.
I was thinking the same thing, but I wasn't gonna.
Yeah.
Well, I hope so. We will. I expect it to be brilliant because the performer is brilliant, and we'll be touring all over the world. So
Well,
we'll see you soon.
Amy's very talented.
Touring
Yes.
all over the world. Hey,
Oh,
this comes
yes.
from the great
Amy's
James
very
Bond.
amazing.
Yes.
Period.
I agree.
All right, I'm blushing.
Did I just? Whose voice did I just hear?
My phone has
All right, let's let Marcus share what he's up to. What are you up to, Marcus?
I'm just feeling like a loser because no one involved invited me to be part of that one.
Talk to Jamie about it.
No need to worry. No need to worry. You will next time. Right? You will next time. I know. You will next time.
So, Marcus, you're up to what these days?
So next week I go to Montreal, where I'm teaching at the National Theatre School for a bit in Montreal, and then I'm to Toronto, where I'm workshopping a new play of mine at a theater called Canadian Stage, a play called The Foundation, which is a very kind of more straight up family drama, also about class, and so that's happening. And then after that, I'm making a show with a really sweet Belgian choreographer named Rakesh Sukesh, that'll be at the Push Festival, called Because I Love the Diversity. Hi, Leo.
My son Leo has just entered the frame, for those who are curious.
And that'll be at the Push Festival. Yeah. Hi, Leo.
Hi, Leo. How are you?
I'm gonna say, how are you, Leo? They're asking through my headset.
I can't. What?
Well, how are you is the question.
Good.
Okay, now Marcus, sorry we cut you off because a cute kid showed up.
Oh, good. Yeah. So a bunch of things, the usual things, all the shows.
Well, at any time, if you have stuff you want to bring back into the space and share with our community, we absolutely invite that into the
Yes,
space.
definitely.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Winners and losers, friends. I think we're all winners in this space tonight. I'm just gonna throw that out there. Big thank you to the two of you for joining us, bringing the art to the space.
Thanks.
Thank you
Thanks,
for
everybody.
coming. Thank you.
Talk to you soon, I hope. Bye.
Good night.
Night.
Thanks, Amy.
Night.
VocalEye, vocaleye.ca. Special thanks to our funders, the Canada Council for the Arts, the British Columbia Arts Council, the Province of British Columbia, and the City of Vancouver.